Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Before we get started, we're going to let some people jump on the line. But while we wait, I just wanted to let you know that you can ask questions throughout this presentation. At the bottom of your screen, there should be a Q&A section. So please type any questions you have for our host today there. And if you run into any technical difficulties, you can chat us in as well at the bottom, and we will try and help you with that as well. So with that, I am going to get started and hand this off to Mike and Akshat.
Perfect. Thanks, Abby. Yeah, we're really excited to have this event today. So just a quick introduction. So my name is Akshat, and I'm co-founder and CEO at Amper Technologies. We're a Chicago-based technology company and have partnered up with FactoryFix for this event. Mike, you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, thanks, Akshat. My name is Mike Schaefer. I'm head of sales here at FactoryFix. FactoryFix is a manufacturing hiring platform that helps employers find and hire skilled talent faster than they've ever been able to do so before. Most of my background has been in the HR tech space. I spent a little over a decade at CareerBuilder, a couple stops after that, which led me here. I'm super excited to be meeting with you all today, sharing some insights, things that we've learned over the last few years working with manufacturers, and hopefully there's a takeaway or two in store for everyone.
Great. Yeah, and we organized this event because it just went so hand in hand around one, helping you find the right talent, make sure that you're retaining your team. There's obviously a huge skills gap in manufacturing and tons of positions open. So how do you really make the most of that? But also, once you do have these folks in the plant, how do you maximize your resources and run as efficiently as possible? So really excited to show how we can kind of collaborate on giving ultimate business results.
So I think it's pretty obvious to us and probably to everybody that skilled talent is in scarce supply these days. What makes it even worse for those of us that are trying to hire skilled workers is the fact that they're really hard to find, particularly on the internet. Most skilled workers or manufacturing workers don't necessarily have LinkedIn profiles or really too much of a social footprint at all. Some people stay off the grid. Usually your best people stay off the grid on purpose because they know that otherwise recruiters would be contacting them nonstop for a lot of the vacant jobs that exist. So the bottom line there is that the best candidates are tough to find. Making matters worse, when most of us, when we recruit, we use job boards to promote our messaging. I think everybody on the call probably knows this just as well, if not better than I, that 95% of candidates that apply to those jobs are not always a fit. Websites like Indeed have made it so easy for candidates to apply to jobs that sometimes they don't even realize that they've applied. That obviously is going to create unwanted strain on your bandwidth, your team's bandwidth, where you're either filtering out candidates that had no intention on applying in the first place, or you're chasing after people that really had no intention in engaging. So those are a couple challenges that we see just on the recruiting side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally is it's not easy to get additional resources. And how do you really maximize your existing resources and make the most of your capital, machines, and team? So that's the third component to what we're looking to speak on today. Yeah, and finally, the high level takeaways we would have today are two things. So one is, how do you reduce your cost per hire and make that whole process as efficient as possible where you land the right candidates? And secondly, how do you develop, empower, and keep your talent really happy, productive, and doing a great job for what they signed up for? Great. Mike is going to cover the hiring aspect first.
Yeah, so just I guess a few tips is you're marketing your jobs to candidates. One of the first things that I always think about is that recruitment and hiring is essentially a marketing function. So if you've got marketing salespeople within your company, I get them involved. Um, the simplest things like writing job descriptions, right? Like the demand for talent right now exceeds the supply of it by a lot. So you really have to make a pitch why candidates should consider working for your company and why they should consider taking that particular role. There's a lot of competition out there, so you really have to stand out. I think it makes a lot of sense to sort of tap into your existing employees, learn from them. Why do they love working for your company? Why do they stay? And that sort of becomes your brand promise. That sort of becomes something that you can kind of build as a core to your job descriptions. But also, another thing that I think is important is less is more. If you go to Indeed, you search for job, let's say you're looking for a CNC machinist position, you're going to see jobs that are postings that are written like novels, and you're going to see some others that are written in just a couple of sentences. I think the right answer is somewhere in the middle. And the one thing to keep in mind with candidates today is that most of them, especially manufacturing candidates, they're using their mobile device to look for those jobs. So if I don't have the time or the patience to scroll through continuously to read a full job description, you might lose me right off the bat. So I think a general rule of thumb is if you could keep your postings to 700 to 2,000 characters, you should be golden.
Mike, I had a quick question. Typical plants that we work with have different types of machines, different types of roles within their operators, and the shop floor team. We've seen operators, setup machinists, programmers, you name it. Can you give a sense of like, does it make sense to have multiple job descriptions, like 6, 7, or have a general, operator machinist description?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to be specific about it. There's three things that a job title should describe, right? The level of the role, the function of the role, and then the department, right, or the area of operation. So you bring up machine operators. I think is a perfect example. In the CNC world, a machinist, the definition of a machinist can take on different descriptions depending on the company. In some cases, the machinist is expected to operate for say 50, 60% of the day. And that's a lot of button pushing, which, by and large is considered as an entry level role. Other machinist jobs, you have to actually program the machine, where that could take up a bulk of time. The point here is that you want to be able to speak directly to the audience you're trying to reach. So if you're that company where your machinist is going to be programming, you want to make sure that that's listed as a senior level CNC setup machinist or a CNC senior level CNC programmer. So I think that's a great question, Akshat, and you really want to target the title based on the specific job that needs to be done. I think this two here, just when you write a job description, you'll see a lot of descriptions that are heavily focused on the qualifications, right? A lot of times you'll see things like must communicate well with others, must be a great teammate, and all that stuff is fluff, right? What candidates need to know is what will I be doing every day in the job? This particular posting here, I love, comes from a company called Capco. They're just outside of Milwaukee. They do a lot of really cool things in recruitment. And I think a lot of us could learn a little bit from the way they recruit just by going to their career site and looking at some of their postings. In this case, they effectively are able to communicate what does a day in the life look like. Everything here that's bulleted out is here's what you will be doing every day in the job. So as a candidate, if I'm looking at this posting, there really should be no surprises. When I arrive on day one and they give me my list of duties, I've already basically signed off on that in the form of applying for this job. The flip side of that is that you will see some postings here and there that weigh way too heavily on the qualifications and really don't get into the work that needs to be done. Talent's hard to find. We're gonna get into retention a little bit later, right? We're gonna talk about some ways to retain talent. One big inhibitor to retaining talent is surprising them on day one with a job that they didn't sign up for, right? So that's why I always say focus on responsibilities, not so much on qualifications, and you'll get the right people applying and the right people sticking. This touches on a little bit of what we just covered. Actually, it was a great question about what titles work, what titles resonate. So I listed out a couple we've seen in our platform that do really, really well, and a few others that haven't performed quite as well. And I think the key learning here is that you want to standardize your titles. You want job titles that resonate with an audience. You want your audience to know what that job means. And so, as I mentioned before, there's three things that I'm always looking for in a job title are what's the level, right? So is this a junior level role? Is this entry level? Is this a senior level, mid-level? I also want to see what the function is. So it could be machinist, it could be operator, or in the third case, it's an inspector. And then I also want to know what department are we covering, right? So is this CNC department? Is it machining, the quality department? But if you kind of follow that rule of thumb, you look at those 3 bullet points, you're golden. On the flip side, right? So some of these titles that don't necessarily do well, these are 3 specific examples that we've seen, right? Pre-make ready specialist. Akshat, do you know what that means? No clue, right? This was a proprietary process that an employer had in their workflow. Pre-make ready was the way that they had titled it. So let's be honest, if you don't work there, you don't know what that means. So are you going to apply to it? Probably not. And if you are, raises some questions. The second one, the 5C operator, was simply the code for that machine. So this company was just posting jobs with the code of the machine. Again, if I don't work there, 5C operator, I have no clue. Sounds intriguing, but I don't necessarily have the time to do some homework to figure out what 5C means. And lastly, laser buy-off is a very specific, very custom process that some quality departments use in prototyping. And for this role, it was mainly an entry-level role. So they were very interested in talking to candidates that just had some manufacturing experience. So again, if I don't recognize that term laser buy-off, I might immediately disqualify myself from the position, and then you've lost out on me as a candidate. So, the point here is to keep it simple, keep it to things that your intended audience can recognize and it resonates with. One of my last points is on salary, and this is huge, right? So salary is really, really big right now for candidates. I'll tell you that pay is your most powerful lever to debunk the skills gap myth. There are plenty of workers out there that are currently employed that would consider new opportunities if they paid more. Taking an example from the COVID period, prices for things like hand sanitizer, toilet paper, paper towels went through the roof in April and May last year. Why? Supply was scarce, right? So when supply is scarce, price goes up. Doesn't always happen with talent, but it can, right? So if your company is willing to pay a little bit more than your competitor down the street, you can take something that's a big challenge today and make that problem go away. And I get it, like it's not always feasible to do so, but it absolutely should be part of the conversation. How can we get those little edges, even if it's a quarter or 50 cents on the dollar relative to other companies that are, in our local area? So how do you find that? Well, I think it makes a lot of sense to partner with a company that can provide that type of data. FactoryFix happens to be one of those companies. We hold a ton of really valuable compensation information for locations all across the United States, for a lot of jobs in manufacturing. But you sort of want to get into that. You sort of want to understand, what are my competitors doing? And, maybe, sometimes the juice is worth the squeeze, paying a little bit more. Maybe it's a little bit less, your margins take a hit just a little bit. But if that means more people running machines, more parts out the door, that could have a bigger impact, if you're fully staffed and looked at as a place where people like to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to make a quick note. Like, we got a similar case where, a customer just quantified how much time they ended up losing by not having the machinist and the setup operator in place. And once you see over the course of a month and quarter just how much capacity you're losing, that argument to increase pay by a bit and to make it competitive just easily happen. I have a question for you though. Like, how do you know you're paying your current employees market rate and they may not leave for a different company that pays a bit higher?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the equation. It's, in some cases, companies need to recalibrate pay across the board and take a look at what they're paying. That becomes a challenge sometimes when you want to raise your wages to attract good people, new people, is you don't want your veteran employees to be making less. So, the first step is doing your homework. The first step is understanding, okay, what are all these other companies in our local area paying? And then it comes down to those math problems. Is it worth it for us to solve it by doing that? For some companies, the answer is yes. And for others, it's no. And that's okay. I think, today we're going through a lot of little ways that can make a big impact, right? So if this isn't one where you could really make change, hey, that's fine. I think we can help you look at some other ways. But, the first step, like I said, is do the homework, understand what other companies are paying, and you might find that it doesn't cost a whole lot to recalibrate your whole staff. And now all of a sudden you become like the employer of choice in your area. A couple more points here just on salary. I think, I talk to a lot of companies that sometimes use this excuse. I don't want to call it an excuse, but use this reasoning to pay less. They say, well, we've got really cool company culture. Well, we offer benefits. And I will be honest, most of the time, those culture reasons and the benefits are the same things that other employers are offering. So there's really nothing that's differentiated there. So I think it's important to know that pay is always the number one reason why candidates will stay or go. All that stuff, company culture, benefits, is valuable peripheral support that can help keep people, but more times than not, using that as reasoning to maintain a level of pay that's below market is not going to work out. Lastly, I will tell you that the jobs that are posted on our platform and the jobs that are posted on the internet perform so much better when pay is in the description. And some companies, I think, are a little hesitant for the reasons we just discussed. I might have somebody on the floor that's making less. Well, I don't want them to know that we're promoting this at this other wage rate. I saw this tweet the other day. I had to copy and paste it. I thought it was perfect for this discussion. But John Steven Sansel says, put the salary in the job description. Nobody should have to take time off of work to find out that the job they're interviewing for pays less than the one they've already got. And I think that hits the nail on the head. When you're marketing to people, they're taking time out of their day to apply. And if there's a phone screen or an interview process and they don't know yet what your wage range is, you've really put them out. And you're wasting your own time too. In some cases, talking to candidates or just trying to get people on the phone that won't take the job because of pay. So if there's anything out of it, my whole piece here that I hope everybody takes away is promote pay. Make it known, this is what we're willing to pay for this job. It can be a range, doesn't have to be a set number, but get a number out there so that people have an idea, of what that job's going to pay. Once you've got all that stuff tied together, I think you have to look at your application process. You really want to make it easy for people to apply, but also have effective screening tools so that you don't have to look at that wide funnel of candidates that have applied. I encourage all my customers to apply to their own jobs on a mobile device. Go through the process. Can you get through that quickly? Are there points of failure that prevent you from completing the application? Just sort of know what your audience is going through based on how you put your process together. You know, Screening is one part screening out, but it's also screening in, right? You want to screen in the right people. Part of that is through good job descriptions that promote the company, but you also want to start asking questions to those candidates that get them to elaborate in more of an open-ended dialogue about what their experience is, working on some similar equipment that you might have on your factory floor. Getting them to elaborate about companies that they've worked for that maybe make similar parts or components, right? So kind of getting them to open up a little bit. Text message technology right now is huge in recruiting. Like, this is probably one of the most on-trend technologies that employers are using. 98% of mobile recruiting messages are opened. Compare that against email open rate, which is around 20%. For our industry here in manufacturing, I think it's even more pronounced. Your best candidates are on the other side of the wall, not sitting in front of a desktop, right? They've got their mobile phone though in their hands. I mean, the younger generation, we're ordering pizzas, we're checking our email, we're talking to our friends, all with that mobile device. So making sure that you have a recruitment process that is mobile enabled is going to give you a big edge. We do that here, right? So on the right side of the screen is a screenshot of FactoryFix mobile technology that within our platform, once you start to see candidates that are good fits for roles, you can engage with them right there. And as an employer, you could be typing these messages on your desktop computer from your office, and these are being delivered in real time to candidates. We've never seen open rates as high, and we've never seen open rates as fast and as rapid as we are with this piece of the technology. So find a way, find a way to use mobile. It certainly is the way of the future for recruiting. Lastly, respond quickly. Speed is the name of the game. In sales, we say time kills deals. And we already talked about how recruiting is sort of a marketing or a sales function. So time kills recruitment. We have a saying around here that we use, that good talent's on the market for as short as a few days, and then they're gone for a few years. So you've got to take advantage of that. If there are candidates that are applying that are good, don't sit on it. Usually 48 hours is sort of our period where you want to make sure that you're reaching back out. Because otherwise candidates, they don't know what's next, and sometimes they feel like they've applied to a job and they've put their resume into a black hole, never to be heard from again. So if you're quick, you could beat out your competition and hire some good people because of it. Lastly, I think this all ties it together, right? So, take advantage of a resource you already have that's free, your website. Not all manufacturers have a page that's dedicated to careers. I mentioned Capco earlier. They have a great one. There's a lot of companies out there that do this well, but they market their company. They also market the industry. We're at that stage right now with baby boomers retiring, Generation X nearing retirement. And so there needs to be a new wave of candidates. And we do, as employers and as an industry as a whole, need to do a better job of promoting the industry. Something that I've also noticed that works really well is promoting what you make, right? What do you manufacture? How do those parts or components get used in the real world? There's some really cool applications in automotive, in aerospace. So show people that. I think if you can promote the parts you make, you'll have some success in converting traffic to leads. It looks like we had a question in the chat. Akshat, did I see that, or have I missed?
Yeah, we have attendee Rachel who has a question. Rachel, if you can just drop it in the chat, we can pass it to Mike. No rush. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Cool. I wanted to make sure we didn't skip it. I saw something fly by there. And lastly, talk to your employees. Know why they stay. Every company has a story, and there's no better people to tell it than the employees that have been with you for a long time. I think the best ones to survey are candidates that have been around for about a year or 2 years. Check in with them. They were sold on something to start the job. And in some cases, they've stayed for other reasons, or in some cases, they've stayed for that very same reason. But if you get to that, right, you can understand here's why people like working here, here's why they stay. That sort of becomes that brand promise that I would use and promote on the careers page. I think it goes without saying, we talk about easy application paths. You want to make sure that once you have that traffic there on your website and they're engaging in this careers related content, that you create a very easy application path for them right there. There's different ways employers go about this. Bigger companies have sophisticated applicant tracking systems that have windows right there in the page to apply. Smaller businesses sometimes will just use a lead form or have an email address that candidates can reply to. The challenge with those methods is that you don't always know that you've converted traffic to an application. So this image here is a sample of a page we could create. We created this for Donson, which created a real simple 2-click application process for candidates. Since they were already, these candidates a lot of them were users of the FactoryFix platform. Their computers knew who they were. They click apply. Their information is automatically uploaded. And on the next screen, they submit their application. So it's definitely something that we could support and help with. If you're looking for new, quick, easy, cost-effective ways to convert traffic to application, FactoryFix is a great place to start.
Great. Well, the other half of this chat is about how can you maximize your team's potential. And the first, Abby, oh yeah, there we go. So the first aspect is around how do you really empower your existing team to increase their skills and productivity. There's an interesting survey in 2018 where the National Association of Manufacturers did a survey and found that 29% of businesses, manufacturing businesses, had to turn down new sales or expansion opportunities because of the skills gap and unable to have the resources to really grow. That's a lot of money on the table that a lot of manufacturers had to turn away. And so at Amper, what we're constantly thinking about is like, how can we do more with less? This is a good example of a starting point. That's a good transition from recruiting, which is creating a skill matrix and auditing that at an annual, maybe even quarterly basis can be a good starting point to really understanding what does your team look like, from a skill standpoint. Where are you missing these gaps? And what are some really valuable areas for training? And this can lead you to bring in either outside training resources or even internally improve your documentation and your processes. So, on the same lines, there are several tools that we have identified that can help you understand where are your bottlenecks. So, one aspect is having a process study. So measuring how long, for example, each step in your setup and changeover process is taking can tell a lot. So for example, if folks are taking a lot of time to tear down the machine, for example, or to program, that can help you identify one of two things. Either you can skill up folks on the shop floor on those skills, or are there any opportunities to improve your entire process where those time bottlenecks are taken out of the active setup process, just as an example. And so some other issues that we've seen are things like waiting on a tool crib to really get the resources to get a machine up and running, programming, waiting on quality, on inspection, and having this data can help you point towards what are those areas that you really need to invest for your team to be empowered. And this creates a culture of coaching so that you can, in your one-on-ones or in your coaching sessions, be more directed on specific skill sets.
I've got a question, Akshat, and I think we focus so much on the people side that a lot of times, we're talking to employers about performance and quotas and numbers that an operator might have to hit on a daily basis. What do you guys see being the reasons that sometimes, like, there are things I'm sure that are out of the operator's control that holds them back from hitting some of those numbers?
Yeah, that's a great point. At the end of the day, any person on the shop floor wants to do an honest job, keep the machines running, and really do their best. That is inherently what folks want to do. And you see a lot of downtime on a machine, and it's easy to conclude that it was something to do with the operator not being productive enough, not setting up the job fast enough. But I think it's worth taking a deeper look at that and seeing what are the indirect or external factors that might enable operators to really maximize their productivity. So, again, escalating these issues to the right people, especially with COVID, it can be hard to find people. Maybe, some engineers are working remotely, or, your maintenance tech is in another part of your building, and you don't want to walk through, 20 rooms to find this individual. And so, what we've seen is having an escalation and communication tool where operators can easily raise their hand, explain that they're struggling with a certain thing, and hold the rest of the team accountable to responding to the call on time. It's an interesting twist on how we can not only escalate issues about problems that are operator driven, but really external processes that are holding up the entire process. The next aspect is just data on performance. At the end of the day, you want to build. If you can go to the next slide, please. The next is around performance. You want to build a culture of being data-driven, accountable, and I think all of us want to be part of teams that have a high standard and high bar for really doing a great job. And I think long-term that builds a really healthy culture. And it's hard to have this conversation without good information on productivity. It can lead to other behaviors like doing things with the optics and so on. And so, with tools that help you capture data on the shop floor, you can get analytics like this, where you can see, how many uptime hours was a machinist able to get while they were on the shop floor. Often folks are running multiple machines at the same time as well, which is a great way to show that certain operators are able to really get a lot of spindle time during the shift, and rewarding such people and letting the work be shown. And on the other hand, when you see low productivity, that might actually give you an opportunity to look at coaching and so on. Next slide. So finally, is making your shop floor environment really modern and with the tools that save time for operators day to day. Understandably so, there are lots of tally sheets, whiteboards, and all kinds of other manual data collection processes that come in the way of manufacturing. These are not value-added activities, and so we've seen a lot of buy-in in just automating this, not having to manually count how many pieces were made, manually have to log every time the machine is down, and then so on. So just like getting rid of pen and paper and automating as much of the data entry possible really helps with a great experience for folks on the shop floor. And yeah, and from an HR standpoint as well, avoiding surprises is always welcomed by everyone in an organization. So how often does this happen where you're running a hot job, the parts have to leave the building to get to the customer, and you find out at an hour before the end of the shift that you didn't make your rate, you haven't hit your target, and it gets a difficult conversation around, hey, you got to stay overtime or come in on the weekends, and everyone has, no one likes to be surprised on a Friday that they got to stay overtime, and so this can avoid production surprises. You can have conversations proactively, so you're not catching people off guard. This can be both internally as well as with customers, where you can let them know, at 9 a.m. that, hey, we had this issue that we weren't aware of, like for 5 minutes, and we're going to be delayed by a day. So avoiding production surprises is another thing that you can get by really tracking and understanding what's happening on your shop floor without having to walk around and manually collect this data. So, those are the key things that we have planned for today. Just want to end on, we're a company here in Chicago that provides, machine monitoring, manufacturing analytics, and covers a lot of these topics that we mentioned, like escalating issues, better communication, better analytics on folks on the shop floor. And if anyone on this webinar is interested, we're offering a free trial of this product for 4 weeks. So feel free to reach out to us if you're interested in that. You can reach out to me directly. It's akshat@amper.xyz or sales@amper.xyz.
Yeah, and us too. Anybody that was on today's webinar, you'll get an opportunity to try FactoryFix risk-free. For 15 days, we'll give you unlimited job postings on our platform, the ability to source the network, have unlimited users. So if you want members of your hiring teams, executive teams involved to sort of see the guts and how it all gets put together, you're free to do so. You get access to our screening technology, which is going to match candidates based on a lot of the machines and technology that you use on your factory floor. It's one of the big reasons why customers use FactoryFix. It's because we key in on those levels of matches. You get our SMS messaging. So even in that free 2-week period, you could be texting candidates. Those candidates don't know you specifically, sending them the messages, but they will respond very fast. And lastly, dedicated support. You'll get dedicated support, the same support you'd receive as if you were a paying customer. That means there's eyes in the sky on all jobs, candidates that are coming through for your pipelines. We really want to make sure you have a great experience. We're excited to be working with manufacturers, and hopefully we can start some new relationships after today.
Perfect. You can use the chat function. If you have any questions or follow-up thoughts, we can hang out on this chat for a couple more minutes, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
If we don't have any questions that have come through, I do want to remind everyone we'll be sending you a copy of the presentation as well as the recording. So if you missed anything, look out in your email for that. Do you guys see any questions come through? I can't.
No.
Okay.
I think it's all good. Yeah, we can. This is a good point to end it. Yeah. Thanks for taking the time out today.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.